I think the proposal that I put forward with respect to infrastructure is one that historically we've had bipartisan agreement about. And we should be able to agree now that it makes no sense for China to have better rail systems than us. And Singapore having better airports than us. And we just learned that China now has the fastest supercomputer on Earth that used to be us. They're making investments because they know those investments will pay off over the long term. And so in these budget discussions, the key is to be able to distinguish between stuff that isn't adding to our growth. Isn't an investment in our future. And those things that are absolutely necessary for us to be able to increase job growth in the future as well. Now, the single most important thing I think we need to do economically, and this is something that has to be done during the lame duck session, is making sure that taxes don't go up on middle-class families next year. And so we've got some work to do on that front to make sure that families not only aren't seeing a higher tax burden, which will automatically happen if Congress doesn't act, but also making sure that business provisions that historically we have extended each year, that, for example, provide tax breaks for companies that are investing here in the United States in research and development, that those are extended. I think it makes sense for us to extend unemployment insurance. Because there are still a lot of folks out there hurting. So there are some things that we can do right now that will help sustain the recovery and advance it. Even as we're also sitting down and figuring out, okay, Over the next several years, what kinds of budget cuts can we make that are intelligent, that are smart? That won't be undermining our recovery but, in fact, will be encouraging job growth. Question. President Obama, well, what is absolutely true is that without any Republican support on anything, then it's going to be hard to get things done. But I'm not going to anticipate that they're not going to support anything. I think that part of the message sent to Republicans was we want to see stronger job growth in this country. And if there are good ideas about putting people to work that traditionally have garnered Republican support and that don't add to the deficit, then my hope is and expectation is that that's something they're willing to have a serious conversation about. When it comes to, for example, the proposal we put forward to accelerate depreciation for business. So that if they're building a plant or investing in new equipment next year, that they can take a complete write-off next year, get a huge tax break next year. And that would then encourage a lot of businesses to get off the sidelines. That's not historically considered a liberal idea. That's actually an idea that business groups and Republicans I think have supported for a very long time. So again, the question is going to be, do we all come to the table with an open mind and say to ourselves, what do we think is actually going to make a difference for the American people? That's how we're going to be judged over the next couple of years. Peter Baker. Question, thank you, Mr. President. After your election 2 years ago, when you met with Republicans, you said that in discussing what policies might go forward, that elections have consequences, and that you pointed out that you had won. I wonder what consequences you think this election should have then, in terms of your policies. Are there areas that you're willing? Can you name today areas that you would be willing to compromise on that you might not have been willing to compromise on in the past? President Obama, well, I think I've been willing to compromise in the past, and I'm going to be willing to compromise going forward on a whole range of issues. Let me give you an example: the issue of energy that I just mentioned. I think there are a lot of Republicans that ran against the energy bill that passed in the House last year. And so it's doubtful that you could get the votes to pass that. Through the House this year or next year or the year after. But that doesn't mean there isn't agreement that we should have a better energy policy. And so let's find those areas where we can agree. We've got, I think, broad agreement that we've got terrific natural gas resources in this country. Are we doing everything we can to develop those? There's a lot of agreement around the need to make sure that electric cars are developed here in the United States. That we don't fall behind other countries. Are there things that we can do to encourage that? And there's already been bipartisan interest on those issues. There's been discussion about how we can restart our nuclear industry as a means of reducing our dependence on foreign oil and reducing greenhouse gases. Is that an area where we can move forward? We were able, over the last 2 years, to increase for the first time in 30 years fuel efficiency standards on cars and trucks. We didn't even need legislation. We just needed the cooperation of automakers and auto workers and investors and other shareholders. And that's going to move us forward in a serious way. So I think when it comes to something like energy, what we're probably going to have to do is say here are some areas where there's just too much disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. We can't get this done right now, but let's not wait. Let's go ahead and start making some progress on the things that we do agree on. And we can continue to have a strong and healthy debate about those areas where we don't. Question. President Obama, you know, I'm sure there are going to be areas, particularly around for example, reforming how Washington works, that I'll be interested in. I think the American people want to see more transparency, more openness. As I said, in the midst of economic crisis. I think one of the things I take responsibility for is not having pushed harder on some of those issues. And I think if you take Republicans and Democrats at their word, this is an area that they want to deliver on for the American people. I want to be supportive of that effort. Jake Tapper. question. President Obama, it feels bad. You know, the toughest thing over the last couple of days is seeing really terrific public servants not have the opportunity to serve anymore, at least in the short term. And you mentioned there are just some terrific members of Congress who took really tough votes because they thought it was the right thing. Even though they knew this could cause them political problems. And even though a lot of them came from really tough swing districts or majority Republican districts. And the amount of courage that they showed and conviction that they showed is something that I admire so much. I can't overstate it. And so there is a not only sadness about seeing them go, but there's also a lot of questioning on my part in terms of could I have done something differently or done something more so that those folks would still be here. It's hard. And I take responsibility for it in a lot of ways. I will tell you, they've been incredibly gracious when I have conversations with them. And what they've told me is, you know, we don't have regrets because I feel like we were doing the right thing. And they may be just saying that to make me feel better. Which, again, is a sign of their character and their class. And I hope a lot of them continue to pursue public service because I think they're terrific public servants. With respect to the tax cut issue, my goal is to make sure that we don't have a huge spike in taxes for middle-class families. Not only would that be a terrible burden on families who are already going through tough times, it would be bad for our economy. It is very important that we're not taking a whole bunch of money out of the system from people who are most likely to spend that money on goods, services, groceries, buying a new winter coat for the kids. That's also why I think unemployment insurance is important. Not only is it the right thing to do for folks who are still looking for work and struggling in this really tough economy, but it's the right thing to do for the economy as a whole. So my goal is to sit down with Speaker-elect Boehner and Mitch McConnell and Harry and Nancy sometime in the next few weeks and see where we can move forward in a way that, first of all, does no harm. That extends those tax cuts that are very important for middle-class families, also extends those provisions that are important to encourage businesses to invest, and provide businesses some certainty over the next year or two. And how that negotiation works itself out I think is too early to say. But this is going to be one of my top priorities, and my hope is that given we all have an interest in growing the economy and encouraging job growth, that we're not going to play brinksmanship but instead we're going to act responsibly. Question. President Obama, absolutely. Laura Meckler. Question. And secondly, just to follow up on what you said about changing the way Washington works. Do you think that you said you didn't do enough to change the way things were handled in the city? Some of in order to get your healthcare bill passed you needed to make some of those deals. Do you wish, in retrospect, you had not made those deals even if it meant the collapse of the program?